What's up everyone, and welcome to another Rust electrical tutorial. I'm Austin, and today we're doing how to use auto turrets volume 2. This is everything you need to know, or at least most of everything you need to know. This is going to supersede my last video on the topic, as there has been a recent update and there's things I wanted to add since the last time that I did this. Before we get started, as of last week, 1,800 subscribers. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you all so much. All right, so crafting. The auto turret, in order to craft the auto turret, you need a level 2 workbench, and of course a research blueprint, and then beyond that, 1 targeting computer, 1 CCTV camera, and 10 high-qual metal. You can use the industrial crafter to craft a turret or turrets if that's what you want to do, and they can be found in military crates, time crates, and occasionally scientist. Now, the easiest way, of course, to get this is to just purchase one from Outpost for 400 scrap and then use it or BP it. If you're going to BP it, it would be 900 scrap total to get it learned and purchased. So that's pretty much crafting. Not too bad, easy to do. All right, so next we have general information about the auto turret. It has a power use of 10 to 11, depending on what you're doing. We'll go over that in a moment. It's got 1 power input and 3 outputs, a no ammo, low ammo, and has target output. These are located here. The power in is here on this side, and you have your outputs, no ammo, low ammo, and has target over here. And then as far as authorization goes, it ignores tool cupboard authorization, so it does not matter who is authed or not authed on your tool cupboard. It requires a manual authorization with the exception of the person who places it, unless they have deauthed themselves from it after placing it. As far as authorization goes, either a player has to run up. If they weren't authorized, they have to run up and, on the PC at least, select E to authorize. Otherwise, you can also authorize your friends yourself if you're friends with them, in my case on Steam. So pretty easy there. As far as the wheel here goes, this is the menu. You can hold E on PC to open this up. The set ID we'll talk about later. That's for that's the recent update to be used with the computer station. Open the storage container here just opens the storage container for the weapon and the ammo storage. You can also just hit E if you're authorized on PC to open this. Otherwise, you can hold E, open it that way. You can set it in Peacekeeper mode. This is what the turrets are set to in Bandit Camp. This just turns it, if I'll turn this on, in Peacekeeper mode, the light is green on top, so it only targets players who have the target, or aggressive players. And so if it's set to which is default, is the attack all, which is what most players of course use it on, with the exception of maybe PvE servers, this will be red up here, so pretty easy. Otherwise, you have the rotate. You can rotate 180 degrees from where it was placed. I already covered you authorizing friends. Clear authorized list clears the entire authorization list on the turret. Deauth just deauths you and leaves anyone else who's authed alone. So pretty simple. So if I were to deauth myself, now I'm deauthed. The next thing we'll talk about is targeting. It has a 180 degree arc of targeting. So from its placement, in this case, it's facing this way. It has a 180 degree sweep that it will make in target for player detection. So if I turn this on and I'm behind it, being deauthorized, it's going to ignore me because it doesn't know that I'm here. But the moment I cross that threshold, it'll find me. And now once it finds me, it has a 360 degree engagement, which means it can spin 360 degrees to engage players once it's target something. This also works for if you were to attack it. So let's say I were to turn this thing back on and I were to attack it from behind. So it doesn't know I'm here, but the moment I attack it, it will detect me, of course, because I engage with it, and now it has 360 engagement again. So pretty simple there. It has a set target range, which I pointed out down here. What that means is you don't get any farther of a target range with a bolty than you do, a pistol, which we'll talk about over there once we get over there. But it has a set target range, so the type of weapon you put in there will of course affect the damage and so forth, and its own accuracy. But like a Nyoka is not going to be as effective at full range as, say, a Bolty will, but the detection range does not matter based on the weapon that you have, and I'll show you that once we get over there. So that is general information, and we'll cover how to set this up more over there for the simple setup when I actually set up using the branch and stuff. So the next thing we're going to talk about is turret health. The turret has an HP of 1000, so pretty, it's a decent HP. It can take bullet damage, rocket damage, fire damage, melee damage, And it can especially take, fire. Its vulnerability is definitely fire, and to some degree melee damage, which I'll kind of show you what I mean by that back there. So what we have back here is a little range down here, and I'm just going to show you each one. So here I've got an AK loaded with 5.56. So if I shoot this thing with 5.56, you'll notice that each bullet does 5 HP damage. So that would take around 500 rounds to take that out, which is doable if you're going to sit there and pick it off, but hard to do when other players. It's loud and whatever. So AK with Explo ammo, same situation, except that I've got Explo ammo in here. And so if I shoot this with Explo ammo, especially if I'm shooting low, I'm going to make fires, which is actually going to do more damage over time than the bullets will. So it's not really efficient to use Explo ammo on these. You can. I've sat at distance range with a bolty and started little fires just to slowly pick away at it. So you do you. I've got an AK with incendiary ammo, which would arguably probably be the best. If you're gonna start something, you might as well just start a fire underneath it, and you'll see that fires do a ton of damage, and it's flying down. So if you keep a fire going with incendiary ammo, you can, even with a bolty at range, just slowly tick away at one. This is a viable way to do it, but still not the most efficient way to do it. And so we'll move on. Over here I have a rocket launcher with a standard rocket in it. So if I will just see what one rocket does with a direct hit. There we go. So direct hit does, a very decent amount of damage. If two rockets well placed can take one of these out. So that is an option if you have line of sight with it, or at least can get to it safely. I have a rocket launcher over here with a high velocity rocket in it. Same thing. I'm just gonna dead center that thing on there. Here we go. High velocity rocket does less damage, but enough damage. So if it's at range and you're trying to hit it, you want less of an arc, this is an option. It'll probably take around 3, assuming you have good hits. We'll return to this one up here in a moment. Over here I have a rocket launcher with the incendiary ammo. This is going to be by far the best one. You just want to start a fire on the rocket. So what I usually do is aim at the base over here, and you just want a good fire going around it. So not quite what I wanted, but you'll see that it is touching it over here. Let's see, maybe it didn't get it. Oh, it's getting a little bit right there. You can see that. If I had a better hit on it, there we go. So now I've got fire all around it. That's better. These are actually a very viable way to do it, assuming that you don't miss it like I did. So the next one we're going to look at is melee weapons. We're going to do this. I'm going to keep these, and after this we're going to go back to that one over there. So melee weapons do damage depending on which one it is, but if you can get up on one, you can do pretty significant damage using melee weapons. So it depends on the weapon. This one does, a much more damage than the other one. It's doing about 30 damage per hit. So it depends on what you're hitting it with. But the point is that if you can get up on them, depending on how they're placed, you can do significant damage to these using melee weapons. So one way that you can do that, let me get over this stuff. I'm going to turn this one on, which I am not authorized on, is that because it's targeting me here, you can see I was hitting it earlier. If I just circle it, it can't catch up with me. So if you can get to one, depending on how it's set up, if you just strafe and circle it, it'll never catch up with you. So this is actually, a note to if you're trying to set up turrets, you got to make sure that players can't do that, because to keep them from being OP, the game makes sure that they're a little slower, so that if players are running by, so forth, they can get by. Or in this case, you can actually take one out without any weapons, or without any projectile weapons. You can just smack it till it explodes. So that is all of that. Obviously, that's not comprehensive. There are, of course, other weapons that you can use. But that's just kind of a survey of ones that most commonly are used. I didn't really cover bows and things like that. You can bow pick these technically, but this is just a sort of a little survey. All right, so next up is weapons. They support all handguns, rifles, the nail gun, shotguns, and entertainingly enough, the trumpet. I'll show you that I have deauthed myself from the one with the trumpet in it, and these can work as sort of comical player detection, long-range player detections. We'll talk about range later, of course, and it'll play music if it detects a player, which is kind of fun. Let me just authorize myself there. Not supported are, not surprisingly, melee weapons, grenade launcher, rocket launcher, flamethrower, unfortunately, bow weapons, the snowball gun, water gun pistols, and the spear gun. So what you'd expect is pretty much what you can put in there. They have, you know, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ammo storages, so you can put 6 stacks in there, plus what's in the gun, whatever weapon you have in there. And that's pretty much it. It's really not that complicated. In this setup, you know, I went ahead and used 3 branches here, and I set this to 34. So, and the reason I did that was because I had 1, 2, 3 turrets, so 10, 20, 30. And then for the switches themselves, they need power. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 30 plus 4 is 34. And we'll kind of touch upon this later, but I did this on purpose because had you used a splitter here, had I used a splitter here, it would have been 1 instead of 3. So it would have been 10, 20, 30, 31, 32. So it would have been a little cheaper to do that, and we'll talk about wiring efficiency farther down. So that is weapons. So now we're going to talk about a simple setup. This is like the most basic setup, you know, for a lot of players who don't, either solo players or players who don't build very big. This is probably what you're going to do. Again, here I have this power source over here. Again, you know, these are mock power sources. The idea is some battery coming into here. And so I have this set to 11. And the reason I have my output to 11, so my max power use, you know, requirement is 11 if I'm using a switch, because, you know, all I'm doing is branch out of here is running to the input of this switch here with 11, you know, I've had this set out to 11 here. This is going to use 1, so if I turn this on, I'll have 10 coming out, 11 arriving, 10 coming out. This one runs to the power in of the turret, and that's all you got to do. I mean, so if you need to put a weapon in it, of course you got to shut it down, put a weapon, some ammo in it, but you can do this with just using with a power usage of just 11. So that's really, really cheap. If you don't even have that, if you don't have a medium or large battery, you can also, if I take this off here, you can, from a small battery, say you had a small battery and a, you know, single solar panel or something, you can run for the small battery straight to a turret, and you can run it, and it'll run for, without, if it's fully charged, 15 minutes. But with a single solar panel, you can keep this charge. And what you have to do in order to refill it, or, you know, put more ammo or change the weapon or whatever, you just have to unhook it, because you can't run this. If I were to unhook this here, if I were to run this over to this switch here, down here, then if I run that over to the turret like so, it's not going to work, because this switch needs 1, you know, 1 to power it, right? So if I turn this on, it'll turn on, but I've only got 9 coming out, which isn't enough for the turret. You need 1 more, minimum 10. And so that is an option, you know, for the simple setup. So now on to the computer station targeting. This was part of the update that everybody's really excited about. Once again, I have this same thing set up here. I've got a branch set to 11 because all I'm using is, all I want is 10 in this case. I'm not using these no ammo, low ammo, and has target, so I'm just sending 10 here. So if I turn this on, I get 10 coming out. That's what I want. The computer station, if you don't know, doesn't require any power. It just works, so you don't have to do anything with that. You just have to have it, and that's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, you know, shut this down, and I'm going to access this. Inside I've got an AK and some ammo there. And I'm going to access this by holding in to get the menu, and I want to set the ID. This is the same thing you would do if you've done any of the CCTV camera stuff. You have to set an ID to link to the computer. So I'm going to set the ID, and we'll call it subscribers rock. No, all lowercase. So I'm going to do subscribers rock, and then I'm going to turn this thing back on. It's got to be on. And I'm going to enter my computer station here, and I'm going to add an identifier. So I added subscribers rock to that. I'm going to add that. And now all I have to do, assuming the turret is on, is select that, and then here's my turret. Now, this is, you know, a really awesome update. There's me. But I play, for those of you who are like me, I play inverted. So when I push my mouse up, I look down. And so the default of this is the opposite. So I have to pull back on the mouse to look down, which you know, my brain does not enjoy. And so I just jumped to get out of that. If I go into the menu, I can, in controls, flip vehicle axis. So for some reason, at least right now, this thing is operating off of the vehicle flip y-axis. So if I flip this, this is going to do 2 things. One, now if I go back in here, go back in, there we go. I push up and I look down, You know, for all of us weirdos that do that, this is what I want. You know, I can fire this thing. You can see how the distance has it's really grainy. They do that on purpose. They're trying to not make this OP. You can't aim, but I can sit here and shoot this gun and aim it at whatever I want, including myself if I want. Shoot myself boom, right there. So, you know, really, really simple. But here's the thing. By doing that, by flipping that, now I've flipped the y-axis on my vehicles. So, you know, the helicopter flies the correct way for me if this is off, but will now fly incorrectly when I turn this on. So for those of you currently like me who play inverted, if you want this thing to be inverted, if you can't adapt to that and you need it to be inverted, you're going to have to do that, at least from everything I can tell so far anyway, and then switch it back when you're done if you're also going to pilot something, because then the aircraft will be the opposite of what you want. So anyway, really cool update. I can see this going really well. All right, so that's computer station targeting. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is the turret outputs. I kind of alluded to these earlier. We're going to cover them in a little more detail. I have a branch set up here coming from a power source with the branch out set to 12, and I've done that on purpose because this switch requires 1 to power itself, and then I want an additional 11 coming out of the output here because I intend on using these outputs. And so right now I have 11 arriving here, and then when it's appropriate, it'll take that 1 extra that I sent so that I can use these no ammo, low ammo, and or has target. And so right now, if you look inside the turret, I've got a Python with 51 rounds of ammo, and when that thing is running, we have no ammo, low ammo, or target. I just have these run to these lights just so we can see when they illuminate. And so pretty simple. If you were to remove 1 round from this stack of 50, so I've got 6 in the gun and I've got 50 here in the ammo storage. Turn this back on. Now I'm going to get an illumination for low ammo because the turret considers low ammo any amount of ammunition in the ammo storage section here of 50 or less. And so it doesn't matter, it doesn't count, it doesn't care about what's in the actual weapon, it only cares about what's in the ammo storage slots here. So 50 or less is going to illuminate the low ammo. If I were to remove all of this out, even though there's 6 rounds in the Python still, and turn this on, I'm going to get a no ammo and a low ammo because both of those, the things that need to be met in order for those to send out a reference volt, have been met by there being no ammunition in the Python, despite the fact that this Python, or I'm sorry, in the turret, this Python has 6 rounds and would fire at someone with those 6 rounds despite those being empty. So you get basically kind of after no ammo, you have whatever's left in the magazine, and then you're officially out of ammo. So, and then finally, if I were to go ahead, and I'm just gonna take this Python out and unload it, put it back in here, and then I were to de-auth myself. Now, when this thing turns on, I'm gonna get no ammo, low ammo, and then it's gonna target me and give me has target. So this is an example of what I was talking about earlier, that 1 extra volt you send this way is going to give you the option to power 1 or all 3 of these outputs. So you kind of get to, fabricate 2 additional volts that don't exist. That's pretty much it. I mean, this is a really powerful thing to use because you can send these to doors, you can send these to the smart alarm, you can send this to just anything you want a reference volt to go. I mean, if you use an AND switch, you could send this to one side of an AND switch and have something powered through the AND switch so that when this one runs out of ammo, then it turns on another turret or whatever. It turns on, whatever you want to turn on. So lots and lots and lots of options with this. Just really your imagination's the limit there. So that is the turret outputs. All right, so the next thing we're going to cover is multi-turret wiring. This can be as simple, beyond when I did that simple single turret. Once you get multiple turrets, this can start to be a little confusing. So I went ahead and set up a battery this time off of my power bank that I normally set up. So I'll leave a link for that if you want to know more about that. But I set up a battery so that we can look at things like active usage. Because now when you start hooking up more and more turrets, whether you use, branches or in this case over here with the 9 turrets and 1 switch that we'll cover after this, whether you use the splitters is going to start to matter. I mean, they all work, but it depends. It'll start to matter if you care. So in this situation here, if I were to want to hook up, let's say I wanted to hook up, I guess I'll use orange. If I wanted to hook up 3 turrets, just 3 turrets here, I have 2 options. I can either use a splitter, assuming the switch here, so we'll go to the switch. So let's say I want 3 turrets, and I'm going to run those 3 turrets, you know, off of a switch, obviously, so I can access them. And we'll start with the splitter. If I want to hook those up to the splitter, I'm just going to run from the output of that switch over above the splitter and down into it like that. And then I'm going to hook these each to the turrets themselves. So each output of this splitter, doesn't matter which one, goes to which turret, are going to run to each turret like so. And then I got to count everything up so that I can see, well, what does this thing need to do? We'll put it into default 2 where it would start if you had just installed it. And so I would say with this switch, it's going to be, I have 10, 20, 30. Let's say I'm not using these outputs here on this example. I'm just using the turret power only. So I want 10, 20, 30, 31 for this, 32. So I would need 32, set this to 32. And now if I turn this on, I'll have 3 turrets. They're all working. You can check this by checking the power in. It should say 10 on each one exactly if you've done this right. And there you go. So it really is as simple as count up your turrets, count up your switches, basically count up everything after the branch switch. For at least this particular example, count up everything after the branch switch and set your branch to that. And that will accommodate you for everything that you have hooked up. So the other option, and then this is just to kind of show you why, if you, depending on how much you care, whether this matters or not, the other option would be, instead of using a splitter, some people like to use the, let's use a different color. I'll go back to orange here. They like to use the branch switches. And so in this case, with, you know, now we're talking about, we have three turrets. If I run power to the branch switches, I've got 10, 20, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34 this time. So this 32 isn't enough. So if I were to turn this on this way, I've got, oh, I gotta hook these up. That's right, hold on. So if I were to turn this on this way, you'll see what happens here. I'm gonna run the branch out of each one to these turrets. And so the last power out you're gonna ignore. When you set this up perfectly, it will be 0. So if I turn this on now, my first 2 turrets are going to turn on, but my last one's not. And the reason is because I'm short. I've only got 8 coming out here because I don't have enough. And that's because if you look at this, it says 32. If you count this up this way, it's 10, 20, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. So we're actually 2 volts short here. So if I set this to 34, now our last one will turn on because I've sent the right amount of power out. And now I have 10 here. I should have 0 there. Each one should have 10 arriving, and that's it. And so if these were situations where, in this particular build here, if you wanted this to be 11 so that you had the access for these no ammo, low ammo, and target, you would have to go through each one of these, set them each to 11, like so. This is going to cause them to turn off because I'm not going to have enough power. And then I'm going to have to add 3 to what I did here. So now I got to make this 37. And then there we go. Now we have enough. So I have 11, 11, and 11. And I should have no ammo and low ammos coming out of each one. And I do. It's 11 there, 11 here, and no ammo and low ammo. So perfect. So in this case, using the branch switches, daisy chained, you know, power out to power in, daisy chaining them across like that, power out to power in, this is not the most efficient way. And so if I wanted, you know, basically in this way, you have to decide, you know, we're only talking about what was 37, it was 32, so we're talking about a difference of 5 volts. That's not a huge deal. But if I were to do the same thing and send this back over to this splitter here, like this, and then hook these back up from the splitter. In this case, right now I'm going to be overpowered, so let's check. So let's redo this. If I want 11, I want 10 coming in, an extra 1 on each one, so 11 in each turret. It would be, you know, it would be 33, 10, 20, 30, 31, 32, 33, 11 times 3, 33, 34, 35. So it's 2 volts cheaper, so not a huge deal. You can see that we're nitpicking here, but now I have 11, 11, and 11, and I've got 1 coming out of each of these as predicted because each of these turrets does not have a weapon in it. So that's, you know, 3 turrets is an easy example because it's, you know, we can do it with a splitter or these 3, but you can, as you can see, depending on how you choose to do this, you might experience different settings. Now, another thing to note is the active usage on this battery shows 35. And the reason for that is that the branch out is going to determine, the way this is set up, I have a branch out. So the assumption is, let's grab some more branches here. let's say you were to, this was in your base, you'd have a power, maybe you might have a power tree going like this. I've got a video on power management. I'll link that as well. But you might have a power tree going on where you're running things like this. And so, you know, that first branch there is the branch that's running your turrets. But maybe this branch is set to something, we'll say 5, and it's running some lights. And this one's running maybe, I don't know, something else that's like 12, whatever. Now the active usage is going to add up all those things. It's going to add up that 35. You've got an additional 5, so that's 40. Plus 12 is 52, and you can see it says 52. So the active usage, once you have a branch out, the battery ignores everything down branch, down circuit of the branch out, as far as active usage goes, because that's kind of what the branch is supposed to do. So, you know, keep that in mind, because when we talk about the 9 turrets, 1 switch, that's where this starts to kind of matter. Again, if you're going to nitpick and decide what you're doing, but basically, you know, so let's say whatever you do here, you're going to get the same active usage based on what the branch out does. So right now, you can assume to say that branch out is your active usage in your battery, which dictates your charging. So right now, my branch out is 35. So if I did 35 divided by 0.8, that would tell me the minimum amount of charging input I need to keep this battery charged. And so, but let's say you have 3 turrets. Let's say you're like, well, I have a 4th turret, and I want to add a 4th turret to my setup. So let's say I'm still using this splitter to set my stuff up. So I've got a splitter coming up like this, right? And I've got these hooked up, and I want a 4th. So what you're going to do, there's a little trick you can do where you add a branch next to your splitter, and you can hook the branch up to the top of the splitter, the branch out, and then I'm going to go ahead and hook up these turrets again. So we'll hook these up this way. Actually, no, let's not do that. Let's do it this way. We'll hook up this turret. What am I doing? No, let's do it this way. Let's hook up this turret over here. I'm just going to run this around since it's around the corner to there. That's what we'll do. And then we'll hook up this turret right here onto this one. We'll hook up this next turret right here onto this one. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to hook the power out of this branch, and this becomes our 4th. I'll lock that in there so it looks like it's coming off there. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and this becomes our 4th, this power out. And so what we have to do here is a very, very simple, quick calculation where we say, okay, let's pretend we do want the 11, because we want to use our low ammo, no ammo, low ammo, and has target. So I'm going to want 33 here. So I got to count all this up. So from this one, I want on what's coming out of the splitter only, which is these 3 here, I want 33, 34, because you got to include this splitter here. So 11, 11, 11 is 33. That's all coming out of these 3 here. 34 is this. I'm going to set this to 34 to accommodate everything coming out of the branch. And then for what you set this branch to, you just count up everything. Because remember, this branch out is going to supersede anything down circuit. So this is all going to be encompassed within this branch out. So if I were to, for this branch here, this, before we set that up, I guess I'll run this. You're going to run the out of your switch to the input on this branch right here. And now we have to adjust this branch to accommodate what we've just done. So now you just add up everything. I have 4 turrets at 11 is what I want, right? And so 4 turrets at 11 is 44, 45, 46, 47. So if I'm going to do it this way, I'm going to have to set this to 47. Once I turn this on, everything's going to automatically distribute itself, and you can track this. We have 47 coming out here, 47 arriving. We have 46 coming out here, 46 arriving here. And then the branch out, I have 46 arriving here. The branch out is sending out 34, so I have 34 arriving, and then each one of these gets 11 because it takes this and cuts it into an even 3. And so once it uses the 1 out of that, you have 33 left over divided by 3. That gives us these 3 turrets, 11 each. Perfect. They're all coming out exactly as we expected. And then because you set this to 34 to accommodate this, that's why you work backwards the way I did, is that now by default, after you count up everything and you set your master branch to the total output, you will automatically get 11 coming out of this power out. You don't have to try and calculate this 4th one, because if you just do it the way I did it, start with the 3 on the splitter, add those up, 33, 34, so 34 coming out of here. And then once you've done that, add up everything, 44 in turrets, 45, 46, 47. And there you go, 47. And now you have exactly what you need. On the final, the power out will be exactly what you need. So this is an interesting way to set this up. You can obviously, like I was saying, you could add another branch right here, right? You could add another branch on the other example and just do a fourth branch like this, just like I did before. Set those up, whoops. And set this to 11. And then you're gonna have to run, so this one was what? This was 47. So in this case, if I were to unhook these and hook it up the other way, now we're gonna go back to this, you know, just a branch for every turret idea. And so I'm gonna unhook this and get this out of our system. I'm going to run the output of this switch back to the input of the first branch over here like this. And so now I have these all set to 11 already. And so if I were to connect each one of these branch outs to a turret like this. So I'm going to show you the other way we had it set up was what, 47. And we'll just run this all the way over to here like this. So each one of these is going to a turret branch out. The final power out is left empty. And so now I'm just going to, let's say I've got, right now it's set to 47, so we can check this now. So this one would be still 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49. So now it's two more. You'll notice it's around 2 volts difference. So it's a little more expensive again. And because we have to set this master branch, it's just going to affect our active usage each time we change it. So it's generally more efficient to use this type of idea up to a point. And you can check those by simply, if you want to experiment, adding these different ways of setting up turrets, and then seeing what you have to set your master branch to in order to do that. But in most cases, well, in all cases, up into a certain point, which we're going to get to next, it is cheaper to just do it this way. If you want, 3 or 4, or even more, you can add another branch here until you get to the point where 6 would be 2 splitters or 3 splitters, or a branch and 2 splitters, whatever. But you just start hooking it up this way. I'll just jumper all these over like this so it's quicker. This is going to be the cheapest way to do it up into a point. So then I leave all this the same. Again, 44, 45, 46, 47. So I'm going to lower this to 47, reduce it to 47, and there you go. And if you weren't using these ammo outs, you want a 10, it'd be 40, 41, 42, 43. If you did that, you do that. And then you'd have to adjust this one because you have 3, so 10, 20, 30, 31. So you'd set this to 31 instead. That's going to turn back on this one because it auto does the math for you. And there you go. That's it. So that is multiple turrets. You can of course scale this, over and over depending on what you're doing. But if you care about the voltage use or the power use, you can do these simple experiments to figure it out. Okay, so the last turret wiring we're going to do the 9 turrets, 1 switch. This is a very popular setup, especially for larger bases. But it's going to actually highlight some of the stuff that we talked about over here, whether or not, when you're going for wiring, whether or not it's more efficient to use splitters or branches, and just, keeping in mind what we talked about when we talked about active usage on a battery. This one's, currently says 43 because this branch out is at the 43. So because of how many turrets we're using and the fact that we need switches to hook them up, we actually don't need a master branch here. It's better to just run a large battery straight to a switch so that you have access to turning them on and off. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start by unhooking this output of this battery. So now the active usage predictably says 0, and I'm going to run this out to this switch over here. I'm just going to run it along these lines. It's one of my little tricks to running straight lines, is to use the lines on the floor. And so here I go. I've got power running out of here to this switch over here. And so if I were to turn this on, obviously I'll have 99 because it's using 1 to use the switch itself, but I'll have 99 if it's on. And so there's 2 ways that you can do this. So now you'll notice that with the switch off, the active usage is 0 because a switch cuts off active usage. That's actually very helpful. If I turn this on, the active usage will be 1 because there's a switch being powered, right? So, so that's different than when I was using this and setting the branch out to 43 because I was telling the battery, I'm gonna put 43 active usage on you with all the stuff that I want. In this case, I'm no longer doing that. I'm not setting a branch to run all other branches. And we'll explain the difference here. So there's 2 ways that you can think of to hook this up. one way, and we'll do this first. The first way is we'll just do from splitters. So I've got 9 turrets. That's the max turrets you can put on a large battery. I've got 9 turrets, so groups of 3 for every splitter, right? So 1, 2, 3 a splitter, 1, 2, 3 a splitter, 1, 2, 3 another splitter. And so I'm going to hook up each group this way here, like I did before. And so ignore the branches for now. That's a different setup. So we've got the 2 ways. So I'm going to hook these up. I'm going to hook up all these splitters out to their groups of 3 turrets, like so. Here's the final one. And there we go. So we've got these hooked up, and then I already pre-hooked up another splitter up here. Each one of its outputs is running to one of the 3 other splitters, and there you go. And so then to set this up for the final thing, I guess we can do blue. I'm just going to run this up here, across here, and up and over, up and over here. You don't actually even have to go up. You can get to the power in front of me. There you go. And so now I've got everything I need. So if I were to turn this on, it's going to power up all 9 of my all 9 of my turrets, excuse me. And there we go. And if you go over and look at the active usage is 95. And that's because I have 9 turrets, so that's 90. I have 91, 92, 93, 94, and 95. So I didn't set a master branch to turn this all off. I could have put a branch and done 95, but there's no reason to. You can just run the output straight to your switch. And there you go. So while that's so knowing that you're 95, you got to make sure that you're setting enough voltage here. 95, I just do 100 divided by 0.8 is 125. Then I add a little oomph there. I've got 140. But really, all I would technically need to keep this always trickle charging once it's fully charged is 126. That technically overwhelms the maximum amount that this thing can send out. And so if you wanted to be more exact, you could say 95 divided by 0.8, add a volt, and there you go. That's how much you need to charge it. And so there you go. That's the way you can do it this way. And so another thing to think about, and I'm going to unhook this, and I'm going to unhook these, is that when we talked about efficiency over there, we talked about, counting up the volts and how you have to hook these things up. The other way to do this, so this is before it was more efficient to use these. So let's go ahead and do this exact same thing. But this time I'm going to hook the branch out, which I've already set all these branches to 10 with 9 turrets. You can't do 11. You can do 8 turrets at 11 or 9 turrets at 10. Just a little tip there. And I'm going to run the branch out of each one of these branches to the turret in front of it. And so this is the same thing I did over there, just spaced out and set up this way. I'm going to run this out all the way over here to each input on each turret. And so remember that the active usage on a battery is based on the branch out. So now I've got 9 branches all set to 10. Running out here. And so then if I were to then come over here, and we can use purple, I guess, over here, and I run this to the first branch in the chain, and what I've done is I've daisy chained power out to power in, power out to power in, power out to power in, all the way down. And I were to turn this on, it's going to work. It's going to turn on all those turrets. There we go, just like before. But now if you look at the active usage says 91. The active usage before was 95. And the reason for that is this thing, and I talked about this in my video that the branch switch is lying to you. I'll link that so you can check that out. Is that the branch switch, it determines its active. It's kind of like another dimension. It determines the active usage that it sends to the battery based on what the branch out value is, but it doesn't count itself as an active usage. So you'd think that the branch would cause 1 plus 10, each one would be 11, but it doesn't do that. It doesn't consider itself for active usage, but you also don't save the voltage. I'm still using, if you come down here and you look at the voltage coming out of here, I still have very little voltage coming out of here. So I have 11 coming here. I have exactly what I need basically because it is using a volt. So I have none left. So I'm actually using all 100 Rust Watt minutes on this battery, but I'm only registering 91 active usage. So technically I need less charging. I have a lower charging requirement doing it this way. So when it comes to this type of setup, it is actually more efficient to use all branch switches than it is to use all splitters, because in this way, the way I did before, I was charging on 95 and I used 95 Rust Watt minutes out of my battery, 95 Rust Watts, and so I had 5 left over technically, but I had to charge on 95. On this one, I'm using every single volt coming out of here, but my active usage is 91, which is what determines charging requirement. So I'm only charging on 91 instead of 100. So based on that, the branch switch is, in fact, the most efficient way to do this because of the way branch switches interact with the active usage on a battery. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about, just because we've been hooking up these turrets before we get into the range of turrets, is we're going to talk about two ways. One, fairly simple, one very simple way, and the pros and cons of each to set up turrets. So in this case here, I've got two independent setups, again, from independent power sources. You'll notice that door open. I'll explain that in a moment. Here's an independent power source in here. Just so you know, you could very easily have just hooked the power out of this branch here up to the power in of this branch over here. That could be the power source. I just broke it up because this is one requirement, this is another requirement, but they don't have to be separate, and that's the same on both sides. So on this first one here, this is a setup that I use pretty frequently. This is a very, this is a common setup that is used to have automatic turret doors, and the idea is that if right now, let's see, I'm not authorized because I want it to detect me. I've got a Python and 6 rounds. And what this is going to do is once I turn this turret on here, again, this is just like the simple setup earlier. Once I turn that turret on, it's going to detect me at its range, which is about 3 square foundations. And from the HBHF sensor, I should say, the HBHF sensor is going to detect me, which is around 3 foundations. And it's going to open this door, and the turret can fire at me. And what I've done is I've set up the no ammo here. I've set the no ammo to this purple line here, which runs to this blocker right here. So the wiring for this circuit is a power source. I've got a branch out going to this branch over here. This first branch is set to 5. The second branch is its default configuration. You just leave it as it is. You could use a splitter here, but they're huge. So whenever I can, I like to use a branch instead. There's no power gain or loss doing it this way. And so I've got 2 coming out here, 2 coming out here. This orange line is running to the AND switch over here into the input A. It doesn't matter which input you use. And I'm sending out 2 because it's going to pass both of these when this powers the AND switch, because the AND switch works by when it has both input requirements, it'll pass the greater of the 2. So it's going to send both of these out over to here into this blocker. One of those will power the blocker. The other one will come out of the blocker and open the door. And so the reason I'm doing it this way is that now I have the power out, which is also 2. One powers the HBHF sensor. It's set to exclude authorized, so it'll detect me. In this case, you would do it differently. You would set it up till it says include authorized, exclude others. So include authorized, exclude others, and that's gonna detect players not authorized on the tool cupboard, but I'm going to set this to exclude authorized because I want it to detect me. And so this is gonna have 2 coming out, 1 to power the HBHF sensor, 1 to pass, which is gonna power this AND switch, so that when this detects, it powers the AND switch, which allows this 2 to pass through and open the door. Now on this blocker, I've attached the no ammo output of that turret to the input on the side of this block pass-through. And the reason I'm doing that is because this blocker is in line with the power to the doors, I want the doors to close if this runs out of ammo. And that's the idea here, is that you could just run the power of this AND switch, or excuse me, of this HBHF sensor straight to the door right here. And doing that would just open the doors anytime someone came by. But once this thing runs out of ammo, they can then run up to it. So what I'm doing here is I want the doors to close once this thing is no longer effective, so that the player has a harder time getting to the turret, its weapon, whatever, a little bit into the base, whatever. And so the way it works here is that if I were to turn this on and get back here, there we go. So it tried to shoot me there. If I come within range of that HBHF sensor, it's going to open the door. It's going to shoot at me until it runs out of ammo. So it just ran out of ammo in the ammo container. So it still has some in the pistol itself, but it ran out of ammo in the ammo container, and so it shut the doors because now it's sending out that signal to here, and it's blocking the block pass-through, which is blocking power to the door, which closed it. So this is a really cool way to have a setup where your door closes when it runs out of ammo. And interestingly enough, if for some reason someone were to blow in the door, the way this works, the gun actually still has some bullets in it, and it's going to target them one more time until it really runs out of ammo. And there you go. And that's it. So that's all that was. So if I were to turn this on, it's going to keep shutting those doors because it's out of ammo. It's running, the output here is sending out a volt because it has no ammo in it, which is blocking this blocker, which is shutting the door. So that's that. The other way you can do it, this is a much simpler way. It just requires a little bit of more work on you, the player. You can just skip all this stuff and you can have an open door that is just an active turret that's always open. And so if I turn this on, so it's the same thing, I'm not authorized. What this is going to do is I've got the no ammo again running to the input on the side of the blocker, same thing, but instead of all this jazz here, I sent the output, the branch out of this blocker, which is 2 as default, so very cheap, into this blocker. The output of that runs to the door controller, and that's it. So it just keeps the door open. So once this thing runs out of ammunition, it's going to shut this door, and then you have to manually open it again. That's the only difference here. So if I were to come in here and turn this on and actually just go around the back so that I don't get targeted by it. There it is, targeting me because I can see a lot farther. It ran out of ammo, and now it's shutting the door because it sent a signal out that it has run out of ammo. And so it still has a little bit if someone were to bust in, but it's sending out the signal of no ammo because it ran out of ammo in the ammo storage. And remember, that's all it cares about. It monitors the ammo storage. And so once you turn off the turret, you'll notice it opened the door. If I turn the turret back on, it's going to close the door because it's out of ammo. So if I were to shut this off, open this, and just put some ammo in it, doesn't matter, just anything over 0 for the no ammo, turn this back on, it's going to leave the door open. There you go. So the only thing you have to do is, if you want this, like let's say it ran out of ammo, let me do this, let's say it ran out of ammo here and it shut the door because it ran out of ammo. If you want to be safe while you do it, when you turn this off, it's going to open the door, and so then you would need to shut the door if you wanted to work on your turret, and then when you were done, if you turn this back on, it's not going to open the door. You have to open the door. So that's the only caveat to this, although not a big one. So if you're looking for something simple, that might be a way. If you're looking for something simple with the door but don't care about it shutting off the thing, you can just run an HPHF sensor straight to the door controller. There's a lot of different options there. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the range of turrets. I've set up a little system here where whichever pad you're standing on, I've alternated some to make it easier to see, how they go along. But whatever one you're standing on, that's the number you're on. So this is the 10th foundation that I'm standing on. So if I was down here, this first one here would be the first foundation beyond the turret. So the idea being that this turret starts at 0. This is foundation 0. This is 1, meaning its detection range. I put it close to the edge so that you can see approximately how many square foundations the turret has for a detectable range. And the sort of accepted idea is that each one of these is 3 meters. So each square on a stone foundation would be 1 meter. So if you think of that, each one of these is 3 meters. 10 of these is 30 meters, and that's how it's set up. As far as the height of these going up, I've got turrets. Each one of these represents a floor up. So this is floor 1 over the ground floor. So this would be, I guess the European way to do it. But this would be 1 would be here. 2 up is 2, 2 more half steps up is 3, and so forth, all the way up to 6. Right. So that would be. So depending on thinking about it in terms of a full wall. And so what I did was, I'm not authorized on any of these. There's no weapons in these, but I did set it up to where each one has a has target output that's running into a light. So when it has a has target, it's gonna turn on this light when it detects me. And then here, for comparison purposes, I set up an HPHF sensor running to this green light, so you can see the difference between how far an HPHF sensor detects a player versus how far a turret can detect a player, and at what angle it can detect a player. So if I were to shoot down here and turn this whole thing on here. There we go. It's going to turn on all those turrets, and there they go. And so right now I'm not being detected at all because I'm beyond this 30 meters. That right there is the 10th platform at 3 meters each. That's around 30 meters. Or if you don't care about that, just 10 square foundations away, I'm not being detected. But as soon as I enter this 10th platform, you'll notice that some of these red lights are turning on because I'm being detected by some of those turrets based on how high they are. So there is if you're planning stuff out, there is an effect on how high the turret is, because its detection range increases, or its distance from you increases as it goes higher up in a stack, right? So depending on where the base is. So if you have a really tall roof, that tall one's not going to get me, but things down below will. And the closer I get, you'll see the more of those things activate, to the point where right here on the seventh square foundation, everything is detecting me. So if I back up to the 8th, I think everything is detecting me. I think 9, I lose some of the top ones. So you can see that 8, 7, everyone's detecting me. 6, 5. At a certain point, I become too close. So now, let's see, at 5, I lost some. Let's see, I think it was 6. Yeah, I got most of them at part of 6. So as you get closer, the turret's view of you gets broken off, and so the lights are turning off because they're losing me as a target, to the point where I get all the way up close, and the only ones that can get me are the ones right in front of me, because the rest can't detect me. So it's just these first two. Not even that one even, I'm too close. So really, if you're right up on a building, 1.5 step up is all that can detect you. And as I back up, of course, they increase. And you'll notice that the HBHF sensor here, let me get back a little bit, the HBHF sensor can only detect around 3 foundations away. So right now I'm getting detected by turrets only. So if I get closer, I'm at 4. As soon as I get into 3, I get detected by the HBHF sensor as well. So that gives you an idea, based on what we were doing over there, that the range of an HBHF sensor is going to dictate how you want to set things up, or where you want to place the HBHF sensor. So if the turret was here, and you want a player to be able to be detected by an HBHF sensor and open a door, you want to put the HBHF sensor at the middle of 3, so it can detect all of this, and then it can detect, if this was 1, 2, 3, all of to here. So where you place the HBHF sensor matters, whereas a turret has a much greater distance of detection range, rather than HBHF sensor. So you can think of that when we did the trumpet over there. A turret will detect somebody as far as 10 foundations away, 10 square foundations away, and alert you if you want to do something like that. So this also comes into play when you're talking about turret overlap. You can make plans based on like your anti-grief TCs, how far away they are. They're very, like you just want to make sure the turrets can overlap within 10 square foundations so that they can cover each other. That's something we're going to cover here in a minute. So a pretty simple idea, but you can just see visually using the lights. The closer you get, you lose. The farther away you get, you start gaining lights here as they're detecting you farther and farther away, up to the point where on the 10th one here, I don't even have all of them detecting me. So there is a limit. That's, you can plan your turret detection range accordingly if that's something that you are trying to do. All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about, someone asked me about, how do you stop people from baiting turrets? And to some degree, there is no way to really, if a player really wants to do something, they can. Turrets can be baited, but there are things that you can do to make it harder. Obviously, over here, I had this setup over here, which makes it harder because the doors can close, and if you think about the detectable range here versus the detectable range of these, there's things you can do knowing that the 10 square foundations is essentially the range of a turret at a normal height on a base, or at least the lower third of that on a base. So as long as you place another turret, if I were to take a turret and I had some setup over there and I set another turret up somewhere on my base layout where it was like this. This turret can see these turrets, those turrets can see that turret. So anyone running in between here can't bait one without trying to bait the other. But one thing you can do, and this is a very simple setup, this is just an idea. Again, I'm using admin zone manager, so if you're wondering how this is floating, this is something you probably can't do. But basically what I'm doing here is, this is an idea where each one of these represents a door with an HBHF sensor. This is just an idea of a 2x2 with double honeycomb. This is the footprint of that. And then I went out let's see, what is it? 1, 2, 3, which is the detection range of an HBHF sensor, such that if a player were to say enter from this side, you have to imagine a base all around this, and maybe these are anti-grief TCs or whatever, or just little anti-griefs inside, and you've got walls surrounding this thing, and maybe someone comes in, jumps a wall, and they try to get in here. If there's a wall behind me, there's nowhere for them to hide. This turret is going to engage them. But if that door was closed, they might not know that turret is there. Once they get into this range, this turret is now overlooking this turret. That door, whether it exists or not, these are within range of each other. And so they will have a harder time baiting a turret while staying in cover if they're trying to deal with turrets from both directions. So a lot of times you'll see players point turrets in toward the base from the outer wall, and there's a reason for that. You know, right now these are way close. I mean, of course we can do 10 foundations away, but that's not really necessary on a smaller base. So the idea is that if you're trying to keep players from baiting turrets, you know, with the understanding that in the end there's just no way to stop it entirely. Turrets are a deterrent. They're not a guarantee. But you can do things where you set up these, you know, opposing facing setups, regardless of your base design, big or small. If you have a compound going, or even without a compound with no walls, if the ground level's here and someone's walking in, you know, they're gonna have to turn this corner and, you know, they're gonna have to engage this turret, engage that turret, and then when they run by, they're gonna have to try and engage that turret. So the idea is, if you increase the coverage of your turrets facing each other in and out, you reduce the ability of players to attempt to bait them. So that, folks, is just about all I got. Big video, lots of topics. Obviously, feel free to jump through all the chapters, the things you want. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below. Otherwise, you can get me on my Discord. See you later.